Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I am your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everybody, and once again, welcome to our show. My name is W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, Sightings and Encounters. All of them, volumes 1 through 9, are available at Amazon in ebook and paperback formats. And if you're an audio buff, you can get volumes 1 through 8 at iTunes, Audible, and Amazon as well. So please partake of them. And by the way, I thank you once again for praying for my wife, Paula, and I encourage you to keep going. Thank you very much for your support in this matter. And now may I introduce you to my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about you, Bill?
Very good, very good. I'm constantly in touch with people from the podcast. You know, Kev, I always reach out to people if they have a story to tell and talking to them on the phone. And I was talking to a fella named Isaac today down in Florida. Isaac, good talking to you. And,
did he see a skunk ape?
Well, he had a couple of encounters of some sort, unseen but heard, around his area. And it's funny, he doesn't live far from Crystal Springs, which I have an interesting account in volume 9 from a college professor down in that area. Do you remember me, Kev, talking to you about him investigating the rhesus monkeys down there?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And he was the one who told me about the Tarzan movies and the Riverboat Captain and the release of these monkeys that are now living down there. And it's funny, this guy Isaac, not far from there. And, you know, there's a lot of freaking unknown country down there where he lives. You know, swamps, Everglades. There's certainly plenty
very
of
swampy. Yeah, very swampy for sure. And a lot of Florida is super rural.
Yeah.
People don't realize that often.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a lot of other places, Kev, that we always talk about, right, Kev? Where people live, they figure, oh, who's going to see a Bigfoot around here? But you go 10 miles in one direction, and it's no longer Miami Beach, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's the way it is, folks. I mean, like I said before, 9.5 million square miles of real estate in North America. That's a lot of country. So, my brother.
Speaking of real estate, Bill, I'm out at the coast today, and I'm walking down the beach tonight after work. The sun's going down, and the fish are jumping more than I've ever seen them.
Wow.
Of course, I don't have a fishing pole in my hand.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
But I never saw anything like it out here. I mean, there were fish everywhere.
Could you tell what you were seeing coming out of the water?
I never saw anything like this, so I don't know what the heck they were.
Wow.
But it was crazy. Right beyond the surf line, the fish the whole way. Like I walked like 3 miles, and the whole way there were fish everywhere.
Yeah, I remember one day years ago out at Shinnecock or Cupsog Beach, and it had to be maybe a mile and a half out off the shoreline. As far as I could see, east and west, huge stripers porpoising out of the water. Now, you know, at 1.5 miles, for me to be able to identify a striped bass, huge cows flying around. They must have been chasing herring or bunker out there. Of course, even if I had a pole, there was nothing I could do. They were 1.5 miles off the shore. But
no, you needed a cruise missile. With a cable hooked onto the back of it so you could reel in one of those cows.
Yeah, it's a funny thing when you run into that phenomena, you know, when you're standing there.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm walking down the beach, and again, I spend a fair amount of time walking down the beach in the evening, and I never saw anything like this. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
So, crazy.
It's an incredible phenomena.
Yeah.
So what do you got, brother, in today's Cryptids in the News and Other Oddities segment?
We are going far away tonight, Bill.
Uh-oh.
We're going to China.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're going to talk about the Yeren. Yeren. Do you know the Yeren?
Well, the Yeren is it's their version of a Bigfoot creature, no?
Yeah, translates loosely into wild man.
Yeah.
Of course, that could be me or you, but I think they mean Bigfoot.
Well, if you give me a couple of dirty water hot dogs, I can get pretty wild. Throw in a little pickle relish and some kraut, and away we go.
I was going to say, now that's the plus side of your trips into Manhattan. Hopefully you're stopping on the street corner to get a dirty water hot dog. Because the water's pretty dirty in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, that water might be a little dirtier than I'm willing to experiment with. You know. If you catch my drift, you know.
I'm sure they change the water quite often.
Yeah, well, I'm more concerned about the guy sitting inside of a 3x4 foot box all day with no bathroom facilities. I don't know what's going on in there, you know.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Yeren. We haven't talked about the Yeren before, and he is definitely a cryptid, you know, and he is reported to inhabit the remote mountainous regions of China.
Okay.
And typically, get this, the one place where they really talk about him a lot is in what's called the Hubei province. And guess what big city that became famous over the last 18 months is in the middle of the Hubei province? Do you remember?
Ooh. I can't think it. Was it Wuhan? Wushan?
Wuhan. You were good.
Wuhan,
I thought you were teasing me. Wuhan.
Yeah, no, I just couldn't. I couldn't get the second.
I thought you were playing games with me. You did great for coming up with Wuhan. So Wuhan is in the Hubei province, and Wuhan, though, is not a rural place. I almost went there once, believe it or not, Bill. And it is an old steel city inside of China. Some people refer to it as the Chicago of China. So kind of this old, big industrial city. But that has nothing to do with the hairy man, other than just to give you a geographical reference, Hubei province, Wuhan is in the middle of Hubei province.
Okay.
So kind of the southeastern part of mainland China.
All right.
And these hairy man sightings or Yeren sightings have been around for thousands of years, nearest I can tell. Mm-hmm. And things got a little crazy over there in the 1950s and 60s, where everybody was looking for the Yeren. And so much so that the Maoist government at the time said that, you know, we don't want you looking for them anymore. And kind of like banned, in a sense, that you weren't allowed to go looking for the Yeren and talking about the Yeren. Of course, only in China, right?
Yeah, but did something happen? Were there murders or missing persons or anything that everyone went ballistic looking for it?
There were always reports about it, and they loved, looking into it, and the country was fascinated with it. Huh. But, the Maoists kind of banned it. But then in 1976, that was, dissolved, the Maoist government, and those laws went away. So they went on to study it. And they speculated, like when the Chinese Academy of Sciences looked into it back then, they speculated that it was probably some type of distant relative of Gigantopithecus, which, remember, the Gigantopithecus bones were found in southern China, right? So they were definitely aware of Gigantopithecus.
Yeah, interesting. Do we know? Everything's tight-lipped over there, but are there any societies over there or people sharing information and/or evidence about the Yeren?
Yeah, so they talk about it a lot. Of course, most of the stuff is in Chinese, so not too useful.
Well, I can read that. Just forward it. Forward it to me. I can read
it over to you. By the way, I meant to tell you, this is the Chinese Bigfoot, not to be confused with the Bigfoot that speaks Chinese, right? Uh-huh. Which we've heard about before, the gibberish,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about the Russian guy, the Russian professor I had that said it sounded like a Siberian dialect?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of
Siberian, Chinese, when the two of them or three of them are talking to one another.
Yeah.
And we compared it to Cousin It, right?
Yeah. Hey,
the descriptions. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Cousin It had the best hair.
Oh, and the best hat, too.
And the best hat.
So get this. So the description of this beast, they say, of course, that it walks upright, and it stands about 6 feet tall, so it's not as big as our hairy man. Uh-huh. And it's covered with a tawny colored hair all over its body, especially long at the scalp. Maybe a bit like Cousin It, come to think of it.
or John, Paul, and Ringo.
There you go. And they say the face is reminiscent of both ape and human.
Wow.
And they say it has distended eyes, I guess longer eyes, long arms hanging all the way down to the knees, and, of course, big feet.
Yeah.
But get this. They say that the Yeren supposedly laughs when it comes across a human.
Really?
Right before it rips its head off.
Yeah.
No, I made that part up.
Yeah. Laughter, huh?
Yeah, I never heard anything like that, right?
Yeah, I hope it doesn't sound like Predator laying next to Schwarzenegger. Remember that when he did that? It was like, oh. Schwarzenegger said, "You're one ugly, you know what." then he hit the nuclear button, and that was the end of the laughing Predator.
That was the end of it. Yeah. Goodbye, Predator.
Boom.
So that is Yeren, and now fast forward to June 30th, 2003, and I found a report of a Bigfoot sighting or a Yeren sighting in China that was in English.
Wow.
So I'm going to tell you about this. It's not crazy, so I'll warn you ahead of time, but it is a sighting from the newspaper.
Okay.
So back to 2003, from Beijing, China. Chinese authorities are investigating several apparent sightings of a legendary ape-like beast at a nature reserve in the central Hubei province.
Huh.
So same place. And they say the mythical creature, suspected by locals to be a Bigfoot, was apparently seen by 6 people, including a journalist, in a Shenanggea Nature Reserve on Sunday afternoon. The state-run Xinhua news agency reported. They say local legend has it that the reserve is home to the half-man, half-ape creature, but several high-profile searches in the past 3 decades have failed to find any evidence of its existence. Speculation that the Bigfoot could be a descendant of apes mounted after China's state media reported several years ago that scientists had found fossilized teeth of the giant primates in the area. Now, they don't say it, Bill, but that's probably when they found Gigantopithecus fossilized teeth.
Yeah, interesting, those giant teeth that have been found in different places.
Right. And the latest sighting described the creature as a grayish ape-like animal, about 1.65 meters tall, with shoulder-length black hair. A vehicle carrying the journalists and 5 others was making a turn when the occupants saw the creature moving fast across the road. By the time the vehicle had stopped, the animal had disappeared. The passengers found several 30-centimeter long footprints, so about 12 inches long, and newly broken branches in the jungle near the road. They also claimed to have discovered a 3-meter long patch of foul-smelling, urine-like liquid on the road where the creature was seen. While some scientists theorize the creature could be the missing link between primates and humans, others say that it might be a bear, of course, a monkey, or some type of elaborate hoax.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to throw the bear in, right? Because nobody knows what a bear looks like.
Yeah, and everybody hoaxing leaves a foul stream of urine going across the street while they're running, I mean, I would do that, wouldn't you?
Hey, you got to make sure you bring the bag of urine with you.
Yeah. Or drink a gallon of water and wait till just the right moment. Unbelievable.
So, Bill, that is the Yeren. So pretty interesting that China has these written reports of the Bigfoot-like creature as well, which makes sense because if it did originate over there with Gigantopithecus and came across the Bering Strait, the Bering Sea Bridge at some point in time, if that all happened, you would think you would see some in China.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And again, here we have the gray coloring.
Yes.
Which we've heard about many times, gray and white. People wondering if it was an older creature or if that was just a coloring, But that color of gray with some white has come up many, many times. And it's just interesting. It's certainly not regional because that coloration comes out here in the States,
Yeah.
So it always brings me back to you talking about all the bears walking around when you were up there fishing, all the different color.
Oh, yeah, in Alaska.
Yeah.
Blonde ones, black ones, brown ones, grayish blonde ones. It's crazy how much color they had.
Yeah, it is freaking bizarre. Now, if you don't mind, I got something here. I was just reading this the other day, and I'm writing this. My new book is on UFO encounters. And a lot of people may not be aware of some of the encounters that have been had by even our own presidents. And this Ronald Reagan UFO sighting, I thought it was worth just chatting it up a little bit before I get into my Bigfoot account. There's a lot of stories about, U.S. presidents having seen UFOs, and really only a couple of the stories actually have, a strong enough amount of evidence to back up the fact that a sighting actually took place. And one of them involved Ronald Reagan. Of course, I think everybody that listens to us knows who Ronald Reagan was. And he actually had 2 sightings that I'm aware of, but both of them had occurred when he was the 33rd governor of California. The first one was on a night that Reagan had been invited to a party that purportedly the old actor William Holden was having in Hollywood. And it's reported that a number of key personalities were invited to the party, as well as Ronald Reagan, 2 of them being the Steve Allen and, of course, Lucille Ball, neither of which are with us anymore, who both told the stories of Reagan's UFO encounter. Now, apparently, according to the article, Reagan was missing when the party began, and the party was actually held up until he and Nancy had arrived approximately an hour late. According to both Steve Allen and Lucille Ball's versions of the events, Reagan was very excited when he arrived at the party. And he described that he and Nancy had seen a UFO while coming down the coast highway to Los Angeles and stopped to watch it. Some unconfirmed stories of the event also stated that the object had actually landed. Lucille Ball, in her account of what was said, stated that after he was elected president, I kept thinking about that event and wondered if he would still have won if he ever told anybody or everyone that he had seen a flying saucer. It's kind of interesting, huh? She was reminiscing that, geez, I wonder if he would have been thought a kook had he mentioned it before he became the president, you know?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Now, the other sighting occurred in 1974, just before Reagan had ended his second term as governor. And this particular story was told by an Air Force Colonel, Bill Paintner, who became the pilot for Reagan in his Cessna Citation jet plane following his retirement from the Air Force. In a story that Reagan told to Norman Miller, Washington bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal, the governor's plane was making an approach to land in Bakersfield, California. It was during the descent that Reagan noticed a strange light behind the plane. We followed it for several minutes, Reagan had told Miller. It was a bright white light, and we followed it to Bakersfield when all of a sudden, to our utter amazement, it went straight up into the heavens. Paintner, let me just get this here. Paintner, the pilot, stated, it appeared to be several hundred yards away, and it was a fairly steady light until it had begun to accelerate. Then it appeared to elongate. The light took off. It went up a 45-degree angle at a high rate of speed. Everyone on the plane was surprised. Paintner also added that the UFO went from normal speed cruising to a fantastic rate of speed instantly. If you give an airplane power, it will accelerate, but not like a hot rod. And that's what this was like. So it goes on a little bit more, but I really think it's interesting, you know, when you have people of note that take a step out onto the water, so to speak, and let you know what it is they saw. Obviously, those two things were kind of really unusual, you know, but they saw something, you know, that got their attention, and they watched it, you know.
No doubt about it, yeah.
Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. You know, when you breach the subject, Bigfoot, Yeren, UFO, whatever it may be, if you breach the subject long enough and hard enough, you're going to get conversations that develop out of that, because people are seeing things out there. They're just afraid, for the most part, who they're going to talk to about what they've seen.
Exactly.
So now, speaking of people who talk to somebody about what they saw, this following evidential finding was brought to my attention by Dirk Haynes, a then resident of West Plattsburgh, New York. This is what the young snowmobiler and his cronies found while cutting up the trails on their snow machines. To be honest with you, Bill, there wasn't a whole lot to this experience. other than what we came upon in the timber, having not actually seen a Bigfoot. Having said that, I knew you would be interested, and so I reached out to you anyway, and I'm glad he did. In the winter of 2002, I and two of my buddies from college broke out our snowmobiles for a little winter mayhem. I borrowed my dad's truck and trailer so I could make the rounds collecting all the machines before heading over to the area between Upper Chichagway Lake and Ingram Pond, with the Ragged Lake being to the south of us. If any of you people are familiar with this area, make sure you chime in with us. 2 days prior, about 20 inches of snow had fallen over the area, with that being on top of the foot of snow that was already on the ground. My dad's truck had a plow on the front, so when we reached our destination, I dropped the trailer to clear out a spot for us to park, and then we hooked the trailer back up to the truck. By the time everything was said and done, it was close to 10 a.m. when we entered the woods. Having made our way north towards Ingram Pond, we stopped to have a bite to eat, after which Bobby suggested that we head south towards Ragged Lake. Now approaching Ragged, we followed the edge of the lake to its southernmost point, where there's a stream connecting it to Indian Lake, just to the south. We had stopped to walk over and check out the stream, and it was Daniel who first noticed the tracks in the snow. There were no other snow machines in the area, and as I said, there was about 30 to 36 inches of snow on the ground, completely undisturbed. We all walked over to this set of tracks, and the snow was up to the top of my thighs as we did so. As we stood there, the tracks were leading both up and down the stream's edge, with the ones we were looking at directly coming right up to the stream's edge. Philip was the first one to actually look down into one of the tracks, and being the most astute of the group, commented that he didn't see any boot tread in the bottom of the print. All of us now looked down into the track to see, and it was true. There was no deep or unusual tread pattern in any of the several prints we were now looking at. It was then that Philip, being the Sherlock Holmes of the group, began to carefully excavate the top of the top snow surrounding one of the prints, being careful not to allow anything to fall into the bottom. He had cleared about a 3-foot round bowl in the snow, and in the middle of this bowl now sat a gigantic, pristine, barefoot print. When I tell you it was incredible, that's an understatement. And all of us knew exactly what it was we had discovered. These were the tracks of a Bigfoot. We all immediately began the task of individually uncovering about a dozen prints in the same fashion, all of which were in a straight line, leading in several directions as the creature had walked. When all of the tracks in this grouping had been uncovered, we could clearly see left and right feet alternating. This was made clear by the great toe of each foot curling inward slightly. The compression of the prints, indicative of the weight of the monster, was such that the actual print itself appeared to be almost ice, being very hard and dense. When we moved the snow away from one of our own prints, it was nothing of the sort compared to these, with none of our group weighing in at over 200 pounds. I can testify that at the heel These prints were about 6 inches wide and tapering up to just behind where the toes attach, about 10. The toes were fat, fairly long, perhaps 2 inches or so wide, with the longest being nearly 4 inches. We followed the tracks for a great distance to a point where they met the main road, and it appeared that the Bigfoot had crossed the street. We got off the snow machines, crossed the road, and sure enough, they continued on the other side of the road going off into the woods. To us, this Bigfoot appeared to be following the waterways, perhaps using them as a trail marker of some sort. There are some trout in these waters, and who knows if it's a food source or just a place to get a drink. But it had most definitely come right to the edge of the creek for something. Now, what I'm about to say is for your benefit and not mine, whether you believe what I've told you or not. When we stood there by the tracks initially, there was what I will describe as a drag mark between each of the steps that went down maybe 8 inches or so in the top layer of snow, which to me indicated that it wasn't completely lifting its feet clear of the snow with each step it had taken. In the same light, when we walked, we had to force our legs forward during our own steps, kind of plowing the snow with our legs to move through it. We were making a mess doing so, while the Bigfoot's tracks were, relatively speaking, clean and neatly laid down as it walked. There were no other people in this wilderness area, and no hunting season was open either, having traveled many miles through some very difficult terrain to get to the point where we had first seen them. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but there are no boots made on the planet with a sole that looks like a giant foot. And the notion of somebody coming into where we were to lay down fake prints for miles is ludicrous. When we had cleared the surrounding snow from, as I said, about a dozen prints, it took me personally 2 extremely exaggerated steps to make up one of this creature's strides. I don't know at the time what my step length was, but I estimated that from foot to foot, the Bigfoot stride was about 7 feet. And basically, that's what we witnessed that day in the woods. What do you think of that, Kevin?
Yeah, that's upstate New York, huh?
Yeah, Plattsburgh, West Plattsburgh.
Yeah, that's cold up there.
So here you have a couple of boys out riding around their snow machines, and they come across something a little unusual out in the fresh snow.
Very cool. I'd say a little unusual, yeah.
You know, and kudos to them, or at least for one in the group to get a little investigative, you know, and bowling down this area, carving out the snow around it to get to the bottom of the print and see what it looked like, you know.
Oh, definitely. Exactly.
I like the fact...
A little brave, yeah.
Well, you know, I like the fact, too, that when they said they got down to the bottom, the print looked like it was frozen. Compression, you know, of the water and ice.
Yeah, you could see that happening.
Yeah, from weight, you know. Remember how, Kev, when we used to make snowballs, you'd really want to pack one of them once in a while so you could throw it and it could do some damage?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir.
If it whacked you in the head, it would hurt.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole idea.
Exactly.
And the more frozen they were from compression, the easier they were to smash up the enemy's fort.
I might have put a couple in the freezer, too. But, you know, after wetting them down.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
So that's really interesting, though. You know, I mean, the guy's apologetic that he didn't see a creature, but what an interesting little find.
Oh, it's awesome. Very cool.
Track line going along the creek and then crossing the street, you know.
Super cool.
I wonder, when you hear things like this, I wonder how many people out there have actually run across something relative to tracks in the snow or whatnot and just never said a word about it.
Oh, no doubt about it, Bill. I mean, we've talked about that since our first episode. Like, so many people don't talk about the stuff because they're afraid of the repercussions or, and even if the repercussions are minor, like their buddies think they're crazy or something,
Yeah.
That's relatively minor.
Yeah. I know. It's just, it boggles the mind, how many witnesses there really are out there. And
I keep looking. When I'm out there in the mountains snowboarding and stuff, I'm always looking, but I haven't seen anything. But I'm looking.
Yep. No, that's all it takes, man. Eyes wide open.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? It just slipped my mind. Anyways, if you do see something, folks, our listeners, contact us on our webpage, Bigfoot Terror in the Woods, and hit the contact button and let me know what you've seen, and I'll get in touch with you and we can chat it up about it.
Yep, and it's all confidential, of course.
Right. I won't tell anybody where you live and what your name is and what you look like.
Unless you want us to.
Right, for the right price. So that's it, Kev. Great account. A little teaser about Ronald Reagan's UFO sightings.
I like that. I hadn't heard about that. I got to read about that a little bit.
Yeah. Ronald Reagan.
Good old Reaganomics, seeing UFOs.
Also, Jimmy Carter.
Yep.
Jimmy Carter. There's been a few of them, So what do we got, my brother, in our listener mail segment?
Yes, sir. So first we're going out to Washington State, to Aaron. And Aaron says, love the podcast. I wanted to reach out to you guys to see if one of you could call to discuss my dad and I seeing a Sasquatch on a logging road southeast of Mount St. Helens. Mm-hmm. Very long and involves the Skookum Cast location and a sighting a year or two after that cast was done roughly 1/10 of a mile away. And according to the BFRO, the location of the cast was not publicly known and definitely not by my dad and I. The fact that we saw a Bigfoot a year later in the middle of nowhere, very close to where the Skookum Cast was taken, prior to anyone knowing about it, by the way, was very incredible to say the least. If you want to reach out sometime, give me a shout. I live in Washington State. Keep up the good work. So I don't know if you reached out to him yet, Bill, but Aaron would be a good contact.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, Aaron and I had a really good conversation.
Ah, very cool.
Now, it turns out, like Aaron said to me, do you recall the Skookum Cast? And I had it confused with something else. But he kind of squared me away on it. And apparently, some entrepreneurial Bigfooters out there suspected Bigfoot activity in a particular area, and they had laid out some treats in the middle of a somewhat muddy, puddly area, in the middle of this muddy, puddly area, with the hope that a Bigfoot would just step into it to get them, and they'd have great track prints leading into and coming out of. But
and these are like some Reese's peanut butter cups, or?
Yeah, Reese's peanut butter cups. And a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken with a side of freaking gravy potatoes.
Hey, now we're talking.
I might even beat up a Bigfoot to get at that.
For me, it would be a basket of Bojangles and some Bojangles biscuits.
There you go.
Bring on that Bigfoot.
So it turns out that Aaron told me when they came back to investigate this area where they put the bait out, the Bigfoot, for whatever reason, apparently laid down on its side outside of the extra muddy area and reached in to take the goodies.
A little tricky Bigfoot.
Yeah, so the skookum cast was of like some body parts from this creature laying on its side and not footprints going in or out.
So it was a little trick or treat for the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
But now Aaron and his dad had an encounter of this thing passing by in front of them. Same creature or another one, who knows?
Right.
About a year or a year and a half after, and had no knowledge of the skookum cast or anything really being around there, so to speak.
Right.
And the BFRO boys and whoever else was involved were real anxious to get over there and have a look-see, having the knowledge that Aaron didn't have about the skookum cast. Mm-hmm. So kind of interesting, how things play out,
Very cool.
See, and to me, that's a very credible account. He's not trying to overly embellish what he saw. And yet he finds that after having seen it and trying to share it, the plot thickens, so to speak, by other evidence being brought forth of a previous evidential find very, very close to where he and his father saw this Bigfoot.
Yeah, and like he mentioned, and I would reinforce, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I forget the exact details, but he was far away from anything where they found themselves when they saw this Bigfoot,
Yeah.
So, be it as it may, people are going to have their own opinions about such things. But when I heard Aaron talk to me about it and the excitement in his voice in retelling the story, it rang true to me. And, it's interesting, very interesting.
No, pretty cool. Well, Bill, what holiday is coming up near the end of this month?
Thanksgiving?
No.
Christmas?
No.
Halloween?
I'll give you a hint. Halloween it is. I was going to give you a hint. Boo! So perhaps this next letter made me think about it, but I did want to remind you, Bill, that the recording of our Halloween episode is coming up, so I hope you have something creepy picked out, because I do.
Yes. Well, I got something creepy. And just make sure you remind me, because I'm going to lay on some extra creep.
Extra creep? Maybe even a creep fest. So this next letter, not related to creepiness or creep fest, I assure you, comes from Barbara.
Uh-huh.
Barbara doesn't say where she is, but the subject is your witch episode.
Uh-huh.
Aha, Bill.
Yeah.
Message. Hi, guys. You absolutely forgot to mention, number 1, not all witches are aligned with the devil, !
Uh-huh.
Number 2, physicians during that time targeted women healers as witches so that women were not practicing medicine.
Uh-huh.
And then she doesn't sign it or say anything else. So I'm willing to agree that we forgot to mention that not all witches are aligned with the devil, and that physicians during the time targeted women healers as witches.
And that's it?
I mean, what else do we want to say about the witches? Not all of them fly on brooms, as far as we know.
Not anymore. They'd have to be electric.
I mean, some of them aren't green with a wart on their nose, right?
Right. How about a Tesla broom?
I don't know, Bill. What do you think about the witches that aren't aligned with the devil?
Well, I would say this. It's a heck of a word to use to title yourself if you don't want to be aligned with evil, because, why don't you just call yourself a healer or an herbalist or whatever else? Once you embrace that name, I mean, there's a lot of connotations that go along with that title, So that's all I'm going to say about that, Kev.
That's right. And I would say, Barbara, I would research what you're talking about more, but I don't want to. And I assure you, no witches were harmed in the recording of this podcast. Just to be clear. There were definitely some innocent people persecuted in the witch burnings and stuff like that, but not related to this podcast.
That's correct. Yeah. And by the way, we sure know how to embrace the public. It's one thing about me, Kev. I've always been a little mushy in that regard.
You've always got a lot of time for witches?
No, but I've always been a little mushy in regard to my fellow man, and wanting to make them feel loved and wanted.
Even the witches.
Don't you feel that way right now?
The witches that aren't aligned with the devil. How about those little black-eyed children?
Yeah, what about them?
I hear they're not aligned with the devil.
Yeah, no. They're not aligned.
Do you mind letting me in? I just would like to borrow your telephone.
Right. Right. They're not aligned with him. They just chauffeur his limousine.
They actually don't get along on most topics. All right, we're going to Michael from California on a lighter note.
Yeah.
And Michael says, my son and I were driving around town and decided to check out an REI store, one of my favorite stores. And REI, if you don't know REI, perhaps you're a witch and you don't shop there. It's a pretty good camping and outdoors store. And in the map section, they found a Sasquatch field guide identifying, tracking, and citing North America's relict hominoid. I was like, wow, that's cool. But when I saw the name Dr. Jeff Meldrum on it, I had to get it. The guide highlights are identification, footprints, casting tracks, hair, scat, stacked rocks, tree breaks, nests, cultural signs, habitat, diet, and vocalizations. It also has a 21-inch ruler printed on top to measure prints. Mm-hmm. Tough laminated cardstock with an accordion-style fold. Just great to have it if you are a true Sasquatch believer out in the field or to add it to a Bigfoot library. Cost is around $8. Love the show. Keep up the great work, brothers. Pretty cool. I spend a lot of time in REI. I have not seen that. Obviously, I've spent some more time in the map section.
Yeah, REI, Kev, is that like just strictly camping goods, outdoorsy?
Yeah, camping and hiking.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what the heck it stands for. It's just escaping me.
Rugged Equipment Industries.
It's equipment industry, recreational equipment industry or something like that.
Okay, I figured it had to be something along those.
Yeah, so they sell like mountain bikes, regular bikes, tents, stuff like that. It's a real good place.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And if they were smart, they'd have 1,000 copies of Bigfoot Terror in the Woods sightings and encounters there for sale.
No kidding. I'll have to check the shelf and see if they have any next time I'm there.
Bigfoot, from what I understand, would be very good for their business because they rip a lot of tents apart.
They do.
So
perhaps they should align with Bigfoot.
Certainly.
Like the witches aren't aligned with the devil.
Right. No, they should align with Bigfoot so that they could be like their sales force. For every mountaineering tent that you rip apart and its occupants, you get a commission.
You don't want to rip the occupants up so that they can never go camping again or never want to go camping again.
Kev.
right? Because then you can't sell another tent to them.
Yeah, but listen, who cares? You're a Bigfoot. You got to tear the people apart. It's what they do.
It's what they do, exactly.
And then they leave a little. They leave a little business card that says "Another human unarmed in the woods."
Literally unarmed. I tore their arms off.
Right. Unarmed. Love Bigfoot.
Awesome.
There you go.
All right, and we'll end with a nice email, Bill, from John in Ireland. And he says, "Dear William." Okay, John, it's a nice note. Otherwise, I'd be mad that you forgot me. "Dear William, I'm sorry to hear that your wife is ill. I will remember you both in my prayers. I love your show and the good humor between you both. In times of distress, I have used the who sound, which connects with the Holy Spirit. And who is H-U. Have you ever heard this before, Bill?
Never before reading the email.
Yeah, and he says it sounds like who. Best wishes, John from Dublin, Ireland.
John. John, you're a man after my own heart. And thank you for praying for my wife. Everybody out there, lift up my wife. She's going through quite a time right now, and I'm sure the recovery will be soon and swift. But
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you people, for chiming in with your best wishes, and I appreciate that greatly. So that's it, Kev, huh?
That's it for this week, Bill.
All right, well, if you find yourself out in the woods near the Skookum Cast area, Northern California, Washington State, Oregon, walking around, eating a PBJ, you better remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.